On our radio program, Guyana's Oil and You, we strike at the heart of every issue with informed views and credible data. The time is now for you to arm yourself with insightful knowledge on your oil wealth. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Guyana's Oil and You. I'm your hostess, senior journalist of Kaieteur News, Kiana Wilberg, and tonight our focus is going to be on the International Energy Conference and Expo Guyana 2022. This conference and expo is expected to be held from February 15th to 18th at the Marriott Hotel in Georgetown. To take us through some of the A-list speakers for this event, as well as some of the crucial topics to be examined, are Ms. Anjani Abel, Chief Executive Officer for the conference as well as the expo, and Mr. Alex Graham, Communications Director for the International Energy Conference and Expo. Ms. Abel and Mr. Graham, welcome to the program. Thank you for making the time to be here with us tonight.
Thank you for your welcome, Kiana, and we're delighted that you chose to have us on. And hopefully we can share with you and your listeners information that's vital to enable an understanding of what the goals are and get a sense of who our, as you said, A-list speakers are going to be.
Thank you very much. Without further ado, we'll head straight into our first question, and that I have set aside for Mr. Graham. As you're aware, we've had about 3 energy conferences held in Guyana prior to COVID-19, which were essentially aimed at showcasing Guyana, building networks, and allowing for discourse on the way forward, given that Guyana was a new player and hotspot in the industry. But since then, the dynamics of the industry have changed, as you're aware. Climate change is now front and center for many oil-producing states. And on that premise, I'd like for you to share with us what is going to be the objective of this international conference and expo, given the change in dynamics of the industry, and what are essentially the ambitions that are expected to stand out against those conferences which were previously held?
Boy, I should have been writing. There were 93 questions in there, Kiana. But I get the thrust of where you're going. And we have been asked several times to respond to the question of what's the real differentiator between this conference and those that we held before.
Yes.
Why that's a question is another story one of these days we should talk about. But essentially, we are billing this not as an oil and gas conference. This is an energy conference. And I think that distinction alone begins to shape the direction in which we're going. We're not only talking about oil and gas, but recognizing that the energy mix involves a lot more than oil and gas,
yes,
and recognizing that over time, the percentage of oil and gas, or oil at least, in the energy mix is going to be decreasing. So we're not only talking about oil and gas, we're talking about renewables, we're talking about sustainability, and we're talking about environmental responsibility. And as we share with you, as I will give a quick run through the program in a little bit, but you will see that really there is no emphasis on oil and gas development in and of itself. But there's a lot of talk about how we develop and provide energy and meet the energy needs of the future in a sustainable and responsible way, both for citizens and for the environment. That's where we're going. And I think that's critically a differentiating point between the conversations that were being held before and the conversation that we are starting now and hope to sustain.
Thank you. Now, I understand that the Energy Conference and Expo is slated for 4 days from February 15 to 18. Can you tell our audience a bit about what stakeholders can expect for each day?
Well, yes. Let me do it this way. The easiest thing to say is on the fourth day, we hope that two things are going to be happening on day four.
Okay.
Let's just get day four out of the way very quickly. By day four, we hope that a lot of our participants, both on the corporate side and the individuals who come to hear the discussions, companies who've come in, experts who are here, that we're going to be having a lot of B2B sections. A lot of people are going to be sitting down with their peers, with their counterparts, and discussing business ideas, business initiatives that people can actually go back to work and implement. So if we do this right, and if we succeed, and we have every reason to believe that we would, people will not just attend the conference and leave. People will have a lot of opportunities to start fleshing out things that people have been on a stage talking about. And for us, that's important. If you don't have a emphasis, a deliberate push towards B2B opportunities, then conference time is wasted in the context of everything else that's happening in the world.
Yes.
Why travel through Omicron to come to a conference and not have an opportunity to try to concretize things that people talked about for 3 days? So that's why I'm saying the fourth day is really important for that. The other thing that will happen on the fourth day is that we are encouraging a lot of our visitors to sample Guyana's ecotourism product. Now, this is an energy conference, but we're sending people to take a look at ecotourism. Why? Because I think Guyana's ecotourism product helps to make the point that whatever we do for energy development, whatever we do with oil and gas development, we have to maintain that responsibility for the environment that sustains us. And if people get a chance to visit and experience the product, I think it helps to bring home to them and to underscore that important value. And that's important to us. So that we're having an energy conference, and we're still trying to ensure that we promote Guyana's tourism, ecotourism product in the process. So that's where we're ending. That's day four. Once we get that, then I can start at the beginning now in the conference itself. So one of the really outstanding things about this conference is that we have 4 heads of state between launch and lunch on day one. That's extraordinary. We have significant heavy hitters. So you have the president of Suriname, who is coming in to speak at that opening day of the conference. You know, we've been talking a lot about the rich Guyana-Suriname basin, about things we could do together. And the presidents of Suriname and Guyana have been working really hard at developing a relationship that should benefit citizens, should benefit our industries, should benefit our economies. And so it's appropriate that we have the president of Suriname participating in the conference and giving remarks right at the very beginning. And not necessarily in this order, but we also have the Prime Minister of Barbados. Now, she's on a high right now. She's got, you know, a clean sweep by 2. That's a really big deal. It was going to be great to have her just on the back of last night's astonishing victory. Not wanting to talk politics, but usually people who win big in the first round tend to lose a little bit in the second. For you to do that really twice is really big. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot for her to talk about when she's here beyond just energy. A lot of people are going to be asking about how she did that. And if you're a politician, I guess you might want to nail her into a corner to really talk about, but that's not what our conference is about. But you know that she is also the current champion of the earth, because she has been articulating on the global stage the concerns, challenges, and needs of small states, particularly small island states, in the face of climate change. And for her to be given an opportunity in this conference to clearly articulate those values about energy development, I think it's important. Because while we are not a small island state in the ocean, we have a very low-lying coast, so a lot of the impacts on small island states will impact us. But more than that, we are and will continue to be a member of the CARICOM and Caribbean family. And the person who is clearly articulating those values that matter to the region now is Prime Minister Mia Mottley, and it's really great that we could have her on day one also participating and speaking at the conference. And then we have the Prime Minister, the President of Ghana,
Yes.
who is coming with a team for the conference. Now, I don't even need to explain. That, again, is another significant relationship, and a relationship that's growing between Guyana and Ghana. Sometimes when we think, we wonder why this wasn't happening before, but that's a significant relationship. Ghana is about 15 years ahead of Guyana in terms of its oil and gas development and its energy development. And so there's a lot that we could learn. I think we can learn a lot from the Ghanaians that would cost us much more if we had to learn this from consultants. The fact that there's that kind of government-to-government cooperation is really significant in terms of reducing the cost of learning from somebody who is ahead. And that too is significant. So we have 3 visiting heads of state, and then our own President Dear Finale, who will deliver the final address in the opening day. Somewhere in there, you're going to also hear from Mr. Darren Woods, who is the chairman of ExxonMobil, who is the operator in the Stabroek block. And so that's what's happening between launch and lunch. You asked the question at the beginning, what makes this conference different? By the time you get to lunch on the first day, I think you know why it's different. Because you have 5 heavy hitters that is really going to be hard to get into the same room at one, on a normal day. Now you have them at the opening of a conference between lunch, and that's a big thing. But let me digress a little bit from the program to tell you why that's also important. We recognize that it's necessary for cohesive development to have policymakers, industry experts, practitioners, all in the same room, having one conversation about energy. Have the industry talking about what industry is doing. And you have politicians and leaders talking about what they're doing. And you have some practitioners talking about what they're doing. We are trying to ensure that we have one conversation about developing for the energy future of Guyana, the region, of the world. And for us, therefore, it's important that all facets of that conversation are represented just in one meeting. So that for starters is where we are. Let me just give you a sense of where we go from there. Once we have that conversation, we have experts, and I'll give you more names as we go, who are going to be talking about what the shape of the energy future looks like, because energy future has to be more than just a series of buzzwords. We have to understand what that will look like, and what are the pathways to that, and which are the pathways that we should take given our own circumstances. So we have that conversation. Then we're going to have a conversation about the legislative context. Legislation as a context for developing the energy future is one that is important, but in Guyana it's one that's pretty interesting at the present time. We have, local content legislation, other legislation that's going to help shape how we develop skills, how we develop our industries, and how we develop policy. And so that's a critical conversation. I don't think there's anything higher on the minds of Guyanese right now than local content. And we want to examine that from the perspective that helps us to understand how are you going to develop skills. It's not just about, a lot of you focus on how many Guyanese companies could get to do this, but the focus must be that and more. We have to really put a lot into skills development. I listened to the publisher just in that promo just before your show started, talking about how many Guyanese are not here and not there, not there. And what he said there might be true, but to change that takes a lot more. We have to put the legislative framework in place. Then we have to put the systems and the institutions to ensure that the skills development is ongoing, so that over a period of time, you can have the skills that you require to really give legs to your ideas for local content. We can have a passion for local content, but not have the skills for delivery. And in our conversations in this conference, we hope that we can develop solutions that are end-to-end. Then, of course, there are the larger development issues in Guyana. And we have a discussion that will focus on, the projects that are going on in Guyana and Suriname, and how those are going to impact overall development. We have conversations on environment, safety and health, and then there are quite a few infrastructure updates that people will hear about. GISB is going to be there talking about their shore-based development, and CGX is going to be reporting on their deep water port development. And then the final of the conference discourses at the end of day 3 is energy transition. And a lot of people don't recognize that it's one thing to talk about solar and hydro and all these things. How do you transition? We're talking about oil and gas, and a lot of people focus, oh, there's gas out there, we're gonna build a pipeline, the gas is gonna come to shore. And I usually like to say, and then what are you gonna do with it? We have to be able to transition our industries, we have to transition homes, we have to transition transportation, we have to transition our infrastructure and facilities to be able to utilize some of the renewables, especially when we talk about gas. So these are all critical discourses that we need to have. And so if you're there over 3 days, these are the discourses. I want to give my colleague Anjani a chance to talk a little bit about other people we have in the expo, and then I'm going to come back and give you a lot more detail of names of people who are going to be speaking on some of these. So it's time for you to challenge Anjani. Anjani is talking today about the expo, so have a swing at her.
You've done quite a good job there to divulge some of the information that we have on the conference itself. So I don't think I need to cover anything else there.
But in terms of
Expo.
Yes, because there's an expo component to the energy conference. Can you tell us a bit about how many companies are expected to be showcasing their services at the expo? And importantly, what are some of the COVID-19 protocols that will be observed, especially since we are observing a rising number of COVID-19 cases?
That's a very good question. We've had a lot of inquiries around COVID-19. Some of the measures that we've put in place is working in tandem with Marriott's policy in asking people to issue their vaccine cards to show that, and then to test them to make sure that the regular temperature checks. We also are planning to limit some amount of traffic. So if we find that at a certain point in the day that, there is an overwhelming response as relates to the general public attending the conference, we plan to put in some limitations into how many people are allowed in the space itself. In relation to the exhibition itself, we have received quite a good response from corporate Guyana. So far, we have about 150 registered exhibitors, and some of those exhibitors are also sponsors. So we have quite an extensive list of businesses that will be out there. Some of them are also coming from all parts of the world. We have companies from Asia, some from Africa, and some from the rest of the Caribbean as well.
So there will be a total of 150 companies on display at Expo?
Yes, there will be 150, and that number may or may not rise as we continue to progress, because we will eventually have a cutoff period to basically close off that part of the event.
Is there any concern about having that such a high number of exhibitors, and especially when we have the COVID-19 situation at this point? Because go ahead.
Not exactly, because the booths themselves are taking up much of the compound of Marriott, so none of it will be confined, or exhibitors will have enough space between each other. For every company that we have on board, they're only allowed about 2 attendees at a time in the booths. Some of them will have about 1 person attending the booth. So we won't have, at no point in time, a company with 4 to 6 persons attending there, and then at no point in time will we have a lot of people overcrowding the space. So the space that we currently are working with includes 2 tents and additional space to the western side of Marriott Hotel. So we do have ample space with ample amount of spacing around each other, and there is the crowd control mechanism that we plan to put in place. So while COVID may be on the rise, we are planning and putting things in place to avoid any other potential rise in those cases.
Okay. Mr. Graham, I'd like to just turn the focus back to some of the matters that you raised that would be discussed at the conference. And you noted that there would be a focus on the environment. And on that matter, I would like to ask you just about if two topics would be on the up for discussion. I know we don't have the time to go through the entire list, but can you see if insurance for oil spills, or how countries can collaborate on addressing oil spills from a national perspective would be considered? And another topical issue, especially in light of climate change and the effect it can have on propelling the stranded asset phenomenon, is there going to be any focus on contract negotiation or renegotiation?
Okay, let me start with the latter. No, I don't think we're discussing contracts and contract renegotiation as a topic that's on the set agenda. There are opportunities in the conference on topics that are being discussed where, participants, panelists, we have both standalone speakers and panels, and we do expect that issues even that we have not necessarily set as a primary theme or topic are going to come up as people engage in it and ask questions. But have we planned to discuss contract renegotiation in this conference? No. I believe that some of the background to that question has to do with the challenges in the public discourse here about renegotiating on existing oil and gas arrangements. But as I said, we're focused here broadly on meeting and our energy future needs and meeting them in a sustainable way. The actual backward look at, by backward I don't mean it's backward to look, I mean looking backwards, just so I don't get anyone misunderstanding me, on some of those thorny problems that are in the public domain here are not on the topic list. But like I said, in as far as those questions are relevant to how we pursue our energy future, those conversations no doubt will come up. Could you repeat? I know
I also asked about
the question was about the environment.
Yes, the environment, oil producing states, definitely one of the crucial matters is oil spills. Just recently, we have Peru that's dealing with that. Can you say if this matter is going to be on the agenda for any panel to basically discuss or look at or examine?
Well, okay, let me say this, that we are discussing the issues of the environment in a very frontal way in the conference. And I'm not a conference speaker or panelist myself, so we're not limiting what issues get discussed when the environment is being examined. So I wouldn't say to you, yes, they will discuss oil spills, or no. We have a session on day 2, let me just confirm it's day 2. Yes, on day 2, we have a session that's titled Health, Safety and the Environment in the Industry. And what we know being discussed there are what are the requirements, what are the international standards, what are the regulations that we need to ensure are being met and complied with and implemented to secure the environment. So we have introduced as a topic on the program the broad issues that are related to our various environmental concerns. Under there are a whole range of issues, one of which is oil spills. We have not limited the discussion to oil spills. We've opened the discussion for the experts in the industry and in the sector to broadly discuss all of matters relevant to the international standards for protecting and sustaining our environment.
Okay. Apart from that, can you just go through perhaps 10 or 12 of the A-list speakers? I know you mentioned the CEO of ExxonMobil, Mr. Darren Woods. Can you give us some insight into some other speakers, please?
Oh, absolutely. I'm more than delighted to do that. So I talked a lot about the speakers who were coming before lunch on day 1. After lunch on day 1, we have Minister Vikram Bharat, who is going to be speaking about Guyana's oil and gas policy and Guyana's approach for a sustainable future. After Minister Bharat, you have Dr. Jennifer Wilcox. She is the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Office for Fossil Energy and Carbon Management in the United States Department of Energy. And she would be followed by our keynote in that session. Our keynote speaker in that session is Dr. Daniel Jurgen. He is the Vice President of IHS Market, with which I'm sure Kiana is familiar because of Kiana's, you're probably the national journal media expert on oil and gas now, are you?
That's a huge compliment.
No, you're doing a lot of good work, and you know I'm a great connoisseur of the things you write. But yes, Dr. Daniel Jurgen is going to be delivering our keynote address, and he is going to be giving the international energy sector outlook. Dr. Jurgen is a heavy hitter by any measure, and I expect that that session in which he is presenting would be well attended by everyone who could get a chance to hear what he has to say on this. It's interesting that the remarks that he is going to be making about the outlook for the international energy sector would be a draw anywhere in the world that he is speaking on this. And the fact that he's going to be speaking on this in our energy conference, I believe, is a big plus for us. If you get speakers of his caliber showing up to your conference, you must be doing something right. After lunch on day one, I did say earlier that we're going to be talking about legislation and how those things are going to help shape our own development for the energy future. And so right after lunch on day one, the Honorable Kaieteur, who's the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, will be talking about key legislation. She'll be talking about the Petroleum Commission, the Petroleum Act, the Natural Resources Fund, a lot of things that are very topical, hot button issues in Guyana right now. She will be followed by the Managing Director of Satsoli, Mr. Anand Jagasar, and he'd be talking about what Suriname is doing with respect to local content development. Again, your publisher did make some comparisons between Guyana and Suriname, and the Surinamese will be, Anand Jagasar will be really sharing from their experience. And just like I said, we can learn from Ghana 15 years ahead. In the same way, we could learn from Suriname in what they have done in various sectors that they have gotten ahead of us, but there's a partnership that could help us grow together. And then after that, there's going to be a panel discussion that will focus specifically on local content. They'll be taking a look at case studies, they'll be talking about what has worked and what hasn't worked in other jurisdictions. And that panel has Tony Paul, a name I'm sure you're familiar with. And then there's Francesco Praza. He's the general manager of SBM in Guyana. He'll be talking about what they have done to develop some skills for the work they're doing in Guyana. And there are going to be a few other speakers. That session is going to be moderated by one of your contemporaries, one of your colleagues in oil and gas media, Christopher Chapwania. And the final session on day one, we're going to be focusing again on skills and what are the skills that are needed for progress in the energy sector in Guyana. We have a panel doing that, and Natasha Gaskin-Peters, who is the manager of the Center for Local Business Development. We will have the Group Executive Vice President of Baker Hughes, Maria Claudia Boras, Brian McShane, the Senior Vice President of Intersea, Lars Mangel, who you're familiar with, would be persons who are on that panel. That panel will be moderated by Professor Sterling Frost, who is the Group Deputy CEO of First Citizens Bank. So if you notice, we're moving on day one from the big policy items to a very strategic and narrow focus on local legislation, how that's helping to shape the industry, and local content, specifically skills development. But those conversations will have a mixture of Guyanese who were involved, as well as some of the international experts, some of whom are already working in Guyana and finding ways to help us develop our local talent and local skills for the sector. So that's going to be a very, very interesting day. It's not all the heavy hitters. On day two, we have opening remarks from Vice President Dr. Barrett Jagdeo, and then the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Hugh Todd, would be talking about Guyana's energy corridor and cross-border oil field development services. And then we have a keynote presentation from Robert Dudley, another name which you must have heard. Robert Dudley is the chair of Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, and that answers a lot of the questions that we were talking about earlier. I'm sure that based on how many questions are possible in those conversations, so the things you were talking about will certainly come up there.
But Mr. Graham, just to clarify here, could you give us some insight on what would be the arrangements in place for the media? Because you are noting quite a few important panels that will be providing some, I'm quite sure, very insightful perspectives on these topics. And the media would be integral to taking this message to the Guyanese audience. So what's the arrangement that's in place for the Guyanese media in being able to witness some of these panels?
Well, Kiana, you know I'm on your side. Come on. We have a lot of. First of all, I hope you've registered.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Oh, good. Then you'll be getting emails with the details of the arrangements. But be assured, we have a dedicated media center to support all reporters, local, regional, international. The media center would be staffed round the clock. Resources will be provided, and we will be able to manage access to sessions and access for interviews through that media center. We'd be working to arrange, like I said, any one-on-ones you want. So, for example, if you wanted to interview Robert Dudley and you let the media center know that, we will work to ensure that we arrange those interviews for you. We have for reasons of COVID-19 and for good order, we have a very strict protocol that will govern the interviews. We have a very specific set aside space so we can all do this safely, both for the reporters and for the people they're interviewing. So we're going to be a little stricter with media at this conference and expo than we would be usually, but it's only in regard to everyone's safety in the face of what we face. You yourself asked how we're going to do this in the midst of COVID-19 and the Omicron variant and all that stuff. And so we have to be extremely careful to ensure that our international guests can come here, make their presentations, participate in their panels, view an expo, give their interviews, and go back home safely. And that our reporters are able to be healthy, to effectively report on the interviews they got. So you're going to find our team is going to be stricter with reporters than we would be usually. But I hope that you could help me communicate that to our colleagues that it's necessary at this time. But you will be provided all of the relevant support.
So there's no panel that would be closed off to the media?
I wasn't answering that directly now. I wasn't answering directly now, this panel is closed off and this panel is open. But the intention here is to make all the information available. As Anjani mentioned earlier, there are going to be some times where we have to put in rules for traffic management, for numbers. We still have to ensure that we meet the demands of the COVID-19 task force. They have strict rules that we have to follow. The Marriott that owns and operates the facility, they have strict rules to follow to comply with that task force. And then we have strict rules to follow to comply with their rules to comply with the task force. So it's very layered. So don't let me say to you tonight, well, no, you can attend this and you can't attend that. That's not the intention is to ensure that everyone benefits from these conversations. These are not backdoor meetings, but recognizing that COVID-19 has imposed some restrictions on us that would not be usual, and we may have to be making different arrangements from session to session based on how subscribed they are. And more and more people are registering for our conference every day. We're encouraging people to signal their interest. And as those numbers grow, we are happy that the numbers are growing. We want the numbers to grow, but we also have a management challenge to ensure that this is all done safely.
Okay.
People with less heart might have said, look, don't do this at all. But we believe that it's important for these conversations to take place. The critical stage of Guyana's development in the energy sector means that we shouldn't delay these discourses, but we must do them safely. And so we're going to be, Colwyn Abrams. Colwyn is going to be your primary contact for access. He's going to be in the media center, and the media center is going to be accessible all the time, like I said, with provisions. In every session that media is allowed to participate, once we can do that, we are going to ensure we provide audio and video access and all of those things. So you're not going to be struggling. Put it this way, you won't be struggling to get the information you need to cover this effectively. We want this conversation in the public domain, and so we're going to support you to do that.
Okay.
And it's partly my job to ensure that you get the access that you need. And I can tell you, if you don't get the access, blame the variant, not me. But we're going to do everything we can to support everyone in the media. And we don't only have local media, Kiana. We have media coming from the region. We have media coming internationally. And so we have to support them as well. And we're going to try to ensure that access is fair and uniform. You will get fair, equitable access, and you will get access as we are able to provide within the constraints that must be respected at the present time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. As we come to the end or close of our program.
It's over already?
Yes.
I'm just getting started. Look, all these, I haven't gotten to all these other people yet. You have to bring us back. I mean, come on. Look at names I haven't called yet.
We will try our best there to see how we can.
The good thing about that, Alex and Kiana, is that our agenda is available on our website, GuyanaEnergy.gy. When you click on the speakers tab, there is a breakdown of everything that will be happening on each day. So if everybody, the names and everything that Alex sort of mentioned is available on our website.
And the names that I didn't get to mention just yet, too.
Yes, all of it is on our website.
And the schedules as well, Kiana, the 4-day schedules. The schedules will be are there, and as you'll see them updated as over the next few days as well. Yes.
It'll continue to be updated, and right below there you can see the profile of most of our key speakers, so you can peruse all of the information that we have available there. Persons can also book and register on our website as well to attend the conference and all of its activities.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Abel, for that explanation there and for your input on this discussion tonight, examining the International Energy Conference and Expo, what our stakeholders can expect and its ambitions. Mr. Graham, you've done an impeccable job explaining who are going to be some of the A-list speakers for this program. Ms. Abel, once again, thank you very much for your contributions as well. Both of you have done a really excellent job. It was really an insightful discussion as well. I'm sure our listeners are excited about this energy conference, and they're eager to see what it's going to offer. So without further ado, thank you once again, Mr. Graham and Miss Abel. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and please continue to stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiana. You do the same. It was good to be with you. You stay safe as well. Looking to see you at the conference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.